Drawing a line in the sand. When will finding fault with yourself no longer be an option? I think this is a great topic to consider. How often do we continue to find fault with ourselves and accept the report cards our mind gives us? I hope you enjoy this conversation and find it helpful. First and foremost, thank you all for coming to the conversation. I just love this topic. This topic of drawing a line in the sand. When will finding fault with yourself no longer be an option? Now, this topic came up in a coaching call, and it really stirred something inside me that I thought it would be fun to have a conversation about. Because I think we tend, as human beings in our innocence, we tend to put ourselves under the microscope a lot. And we tend to live under that microscope. And under that microscope, we have this part of us that is very convincingly giving us a report card all the time. How am I doing? How am I doing? And somehow it comes with such a strong feeling that it convinces us it is a worthy authority to give our attention to. All it can, and it's so constant and it's been with us for so long that we feel like it's a part of life versus just part of the game of being human and having a brain that generates thought all the time. Just generating thought all the time. And since we kind of started out life as being the center of our own universe, it doesn't change much. From here until we leave, and I don't know, whenever that expiration date pops up, we're kind of the center of our universe, and we have this part of us that is giving us a report card all the time. All the time. All the time. So I was just in a moment of reflection. I'm curious what you feel like if this happens to you, if it happens to you, if you feel like how this is a benefit to you to listen to the report card. Do you feel like it's been beneficial? In a loving, supportive way. Let me put it that way. Is it the magic medicine that inspires you and invites you to take on more of life? So that's the piece I think is so fascinating that we can get onto, is that the feeling of this is not a benevolent feeling of an invitation to take on more of life. To really extend an invitation to discover and explore more about who you truly are. And that this part of us that we can get onto, if we really take it out of the back of the closet and put it on the table and go, does this really invite me into a good feeling in life? Does this invite me into a place of inspired action? Does this feeling invite me to offer a greater contribution? Now, if it does, great and wonderful. If it doesn't, I'm inviting you to reconsider taking all of that in, all of the time, as being somewhat relevant to who you are as a human being. Because it's not relevant at all to who you are as a human being. It's just a stream of thought that comes through our head time and time again. It's something we can't control. We don't need to control. We can't stop. We don't need to do anything with it. And one of the greatest contributors to how we feel in life is if we do nothing with it. Let it come, let it go. We don't need to battle it. We don't need to even take it as a worthy message and then come up with an antidote to that message? Do you see the work that's involved in coming up with an antidote to an unworthy message? If we see it as an unworthy message to begin with and not helpful, it's not there to propel us to a more expansive experience of life, in our innocence, we'll catch ourselves in it, but we can wake up more and more and more to the way it's not helpful. It's just, we gain understanding that is not the helpful place to take in information. So what I was thinking too was like, okay, this report card that this manufacturer gives us all the time, how we're doing in life. This report card is giving us feedback on our idiosyncrasies. Okay? Now, everybody has them. And I think that's part of what could be so helpful is if we saw the universal nature of human beings is everybody has idiosyncrasies. We put our foot in our mouth, we get emotional, we get reactive, we get ill, we get well, we gain weight, we lose weight, we step in it, sometimes we have to clean it off our shoe. It's like this is all just idiosyncrasies of being human. And I like to kind of call them about in the sense of like human frailty, not human fault, just human frailty. That it's just part of the system. It's just part of the system. Like our life on this planet has weather systems, Some we're in agreement with. Some people like rain. Some people like sunshine. It's ever changing. An idiosyncrasy of being alive is that we have weather patterns that change. So we all have idiosyncrasies, which is universal. And for me, what was most helpful for me is when I saw that all the things that were on my report card and the judgments about my presence on the planet were rejecting just the idiosyncrasies of being a human being. Thinking I could overcome being a human being. And how much work that takes to just overcome being a human being, which can't be done. Low moods, high moods. How I react to somebody in a low mood is very different than how I react to somebody in a better mood. It's like, it's not an indictable offense. It's just part of being human. Part of being human. So, and so it's like, when I got that, it was like, wow, I'm not the problem I thought I was. I'm just human. I live within this system of unpredictability. I live in this system of getting my feelings hurt. I live in this system of feeling rejected. I live in this system of I need to weigh 10 pounds less than I do. I live in this system that I want a yoga body, which is laughable because I do yoga every day and I still don't have a yoga body. So it's like, okay. So in that place of like, universally, that every human being on this planet is going to have idiosyncrasies that they can have the opportunity to make peace with, to just lay it down and invite a level of acceptance in, for not, and taking yourself off the list of being a problem to solve. If you really saw yourself as inherently whole and complete, there's nothing in you broken. We can just gain some understanding for the system that we live in. That can according to our mind, can be messy. But that's just according to our mind. It's not messy. If we understand it, it's not messy at all. We could just kind of have more spaciousness around um, the humanness of it all. A little more spaciousness around drinking the Kool-Aid on that report card all the time. Or even thinking, that report card shows up in many ways, but even thinking that I should know better, I should do better. It's like, truly, for every single human being, is doing the best they possibly can at their current level of consciousness. You cannot operate above your level of consciousness in that moment. Now, in a split second, you can have a higher level of consciousness, meaning you can see options that you didn't see before. You can have greater understanding in 1 minute that you didn't have today. But too often we come back and we reflect on the history of our life, and we tend to get a report card from our mind on my current level of consciousness and how my decisions looked 30, 40, 50 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago. And then we tend to our mind wants to hold us, that report card of the past, to today's level of consciousness. And it's like, to me, it's the same thing of like medicine. It's like what made sense in medicine 50 years ago doesn't make sense today. So it doesn't make any sense to grade, my tonsillectomy at 6 to how they might do it today. Just doesn't make any sense. So I say that when we go in, it's like, wait a minute, what if we, all of us, just kind of let ourselves off the hook for anything before today, knowing that at that moment in time, I was operating at a level of consciousness where what I chose in that moment made perfect sense. End of story. That gives an opportunity. First of all, you can take it off your mind, which is great news. Anytime you can take something off your mind guarantees you a better experience of life. You can take that one to the bank. And so I was thinking, and I extend this invitation to you guys. It's like, what would it take, or even the piece about what would it take for you to stop finding fault with yourself and your humanity? And I say that about even to write that question down, and I think it's a great question to take into the new year. It's like, what would it take for you to let yourself off the hook of your humanity and stop finding fault with yourself and allowing acceptance to take the place where that report card always sat? I think it's a great question for reflection. And whatever comes, whatever comes to you as an individual, I invite you to do it. Because your own creative process will enlist and activate and share with you what would be most helpful. It's like, because this is an inside job. This is a mano a mano inside job. Nobody's recipe is going to be the same. Everybody will be different. But it's like, what would it take for me to really let myself off the hook and quit? I always used to laugh. I always called it like, what would it take for me to quit chewing my own leg off? It would, I would be in this trap like a bear trap, and this was the visual I would get. It'd be like, here I am. I'm clamped down in a bear trap, and I'm chewing my own leg off, but I'm chewing off the wrong side. I'm chewing off the side that's in the trap instead of the other one, so I'm not getting any freer. I'm just chewing on myself and creating more suffering. So I'd love to throw that out there, just for discussion and to open the conversation about, does it interest you? Does it sound like an invitation that would benefit? You know, I'd say a more fun 21 is kind of what stirs in my head, which would not be needing to raise the bar too high. I mean, you know, it'd be a great opportunity. But just to play with it about what would it take for you to let yourself off the hook and just to decide to draw a line in the sand and not cross it. So would anybody have any questions? Linda.
I think that, and I've had this conversation in a lot of the personal growth work I've done over the years. And but the conversation still comes up because I'm still a human being, you know?
Yep.
And as you were talking, one of the first things that came to me was the idea of just hugging myself, number one. And, just to nurture myself, even in the simplest little way, is a big, it lets my mind question, well, wait a minute, I still need to be nurtured. So what's the validity of all this? And then to remind myself that every other person on the planet has that little voice that says, you aren't doing it right, and then you need, or whatever it says to each individual. It's still the same creepy little voice, or a similar creepy little
It's the
voice.
same mechanism, you know?
Less comments.
Right.
That have nothing to do with who any of us really is. And but just to remember that I'm not alone in that, and that everybody else has it, and that even the people that I'm comparing myself to, because a lot of it is, oh, I'm not as talented as so-and-so, or I'm not as generous as so-and-so, or I'm not as compassionate, or I'm not as enlightened, or whatever, that even the quote unquote best people in any category that I might criticize myself still have that voice, still have something going on that they are going to criticize themselves about.
Yeah, or they're definitely going to have a narration of their presence on the
Some
planet.
kind of a narration. Yeah, exactly.
And to that point, I think that's a great way of waking up, of like even seeing that comparing is part of that report card.
Yeah.
It may be a little more subtle form, but that comparing is definitely another package that carries a report card of how am I doing? And how are you on that better than, less than scenario? And, they're both sides of the same nickel.
Yeah, and unfortunately, then when I do, in that report card, when I do get an A- compared to somebody else's B+, or what I think is somebody else's B+, then that little voice gets kind of smug and, complacent. So that's not a win either. If I compare myself favorably, it's not a win.
And the other part is like when you back it up, it's like all of that grading is being formulated off of my mental illusion of what's going on, which is fabricated at that point.
Mm-hmm.
See, that is the fabrication that, I'm basing my entire reality of my presence on this planet off of a scenario that my mind is painted.
Yeah. And how would I possibly know what any other person's circumstances that led them to be an A+ or a B- or what,
Right. Right.
I mean, and do it in the wildest of my imagination, would their circumstances have been comparable to mine? No, of course not. We're two different people.
Well, what's so beautiful, Linda, is that even say identical twins have a completely different experience of life.
Mhm.
Which I think is so fascinating. It's like looks the same on the outside. How could you have different experiences on the inside? It's like because that's where our experience is being created. It's not being created on the outside.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Yeah, Singapore. Oh, you're muted. Let me get you on mute.
So thank you. So when you posted the question, I right away intuitively came to get myself out of that train of thought. Art would be something that would help me and get me out of my mind, out of my brain, and focus on art. But uh, so the thing that I have a trigger person in my life, and he's my unpaid teacher, and so he teaches me to draw the line in the sand, but it's always too late. So right, I get very frustrated with that person because he's pushing my line over, and then what I tell myself is you have to learn to say no, or you have to learn to say no in a kind way instead of being reactive. And so going and doing art is not going to help. It may help. It may help eventually, to unhook from that reaction.
Mm.
But the whole process of stopping to find fault in yourself, or even keep on biting your leg off, you, you have to stop it somehow. But it can also be an action that is good, like in my case, saying no,
Mm.
or learning to say no in a kind way instead of flipping out.
And I think the subtlety of what you're saying for is like the report card came in that you get the message too late. Now that's
Yeah.
made up.
Pardon?
That's completely made up. So what if you
Okay.
get the message when you get it and something wakes up and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I might want to do this differently. That could be the
Mhm.
message. It's not like it's a late message. The subtleties of all those report cards that come in is like, wait a minute, I'm getting the information now. What makes sense to me now? It's not late. It's not too late. We wake up when we wake up. That's the gift.
Okay. All right.
There's no wasted time. It's been going on too long. I've had enough of this. It's like, no, it's perfect timing.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect timing. And see, and if you can relax and know that it's happening in perfect timing, the reaction goes down. You have all the time in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. That really moves me.
Totally, because we want to feel more connected to everybody. I think every human being yearns for connection.
Mm-hmm.
And this report
Yeah.
card tends to create separation, like the comparing or um, well, I'm not, you know, they don't want me in that group, whatever it makes up, in whatever our brain makes up about separation, which generates disconnection. That's like, well, that's not what any of us want, not the core of our
That's
being.
that's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, Ingeborg. And Ingeborg, I know another Ingeborg on the planet. Isn't that
Oh,
fascinating? I know two.
thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl. Not muted. You're muted, Cheryl.
Now, I'm unmuted. Okay. Other people are important to me. I don't think I can do this on my own. And so what I try to do is surround myself with affirmative people, um, who are non-judgmental of themselves and others. Um, but also, even with friends, it takes courage to experiment. It's like I'm trying to find my voice, just to speak up. And it may not come out the way I want it to. It may bring a different reaction, but I think the courage to just try, and
Yep.
experiment and stand up for myself in small ways with people I trust. I can't imagine doing it with somebody like Ingeborg said, a teacher who, I've had those, but even with friendly teachers, it takes courage sometimes to speak up and say no or say, here's what I want.
But
But
what
I,
if you have nothing to lose?
hey,
You can
yeah,
always apologize. That's part of that. You can just, you can take your foot out of your mouth. You can wipe it off your shoe. Whatever you step in, you can always apologize. And if they're not willing to hear your apology, then maybe you don't need to work that hard toward that connection anyway. It's not worth it. Maybe there's no ROI on that investment. It might be a good thing to give you some feedback.
thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Cherie. Good
Nice.
to see you.
Good to see you too.
One of the things that helps me is I'm in a men's support network, and I have great support from my husband. And I'm not able to do this by myself. And so I often enlist allies to say, I'm not feeling very good about myself. I need to be reminded of my creativity, my resourcefulness, my goodness, that kind of thing. And what I know is that's the truth, but I know that intellectually. It's the emotional part that I struggle with. And uh, so I find myself making different choices the next time.
Yeah, and I think if we all fundamentally, I mean, to me, it's kind of hard to argue with the truth of what we truly are, however you want to look at it. It's like we're all just energy in a meat suit, you know what I mean, so to speak, to put it real simply. But one of the greatest things that come to mind for me was like, I don't even know if these things still exist, but I remember being very young and walking through a hospital and going past like the nursery window, where they had all the little babies in those little things, you know? And I remember just standing there looking at the perfection of those babies in the window. Now, in my mind, it was so displayed the perfection of creation. The pure essence of life in these beings. And it's like, how on earth, it got to be ridiculous going, how on earth could I see myself as other than that? I came in the same way. The same way. It's like we're just this beautiful essence of life and energy that inhabits a body. And anything contrary to that is that what I call like an aftermarket add on. So I don't even have to get it intellectually because it lives in the land of right and wrong, good and bad. That's where this system operates in. And in a heart-centered place, there's no right and wrong, good and bad. I mean, the depths of our being, there's not an imperfect baby in that space. However, they were created and given whatever form their life took. Whatever physical form, they're still in that essence of wholeness. What my mind thinks about that, I'm starting to care less and less and less and less. Again, back to that report card of how I'm showing up in the world. That's the truth of what we are. What my mind makes up of it, who cares? We can just get unhooked from that, like a bad U-Haul. Let's just unhook from that mental narration of the truth. Because you see it in the people you love, Tony. I know you do. I know you do. So Renat, thank you, Tony. Renat.
Hi, thank you, Cherie. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for posing this wonderful question. When you asked, I wrote it down, when you asked what would it take for me to let myself off the hook, to let off my fragility, my humanity, there's a couple of things that I've come to recently. One is the understanding that whenever I mess up, that it is a sign for me to course correct. So I can see it as a mistake and I can beat myself up over it. But I can also see it as the opportunity to correct my direction. And intellectually, that's been helpful for me lately. And the other helpful thing is really connecting with my deeper self, which is this, unconditional love lies there. It's not like, I'm tapped into it all the time, but with practice, I'm there more of the time. So there is this kind of, I can almost kind of like put myself in a situation where, I'm kind of rehearsing whatever that so-called mistake, that moment was. And I can view it from the perspective of the higher self, the deeper self, the true self. And she's just watching it and smiling lovingly, And so just connecting to just how much she really actually loves me. That's been very, very helpful. Yeah.
That's always helpful to kind of be able to be a witness to what's going on inside. Because it helps you just get out of the trenches of like being in it. Watching it happen is very different than just being in it. Because we're kind of underwater when we're in it. If you can just poke your head up a little bit above it and see what's happening, that's all you need to have some leverage in the situation. Thank you, Renat. Darina.
Thanks, Cherie. One of the things that I think helps me is to remember that in that moment earlier when you said, when you were doing or saying whatever it is that got expressed, it felt right to you or natural. And so I sometimes, when I feel like I've made a mistake or I've been told I'm sort of on the edge of things, I go back to thinking about the instinct of who I am. And that is such a level, like just being an animal, a horse, a mosquito, whatever it is, just is the instinct of that individual. And recently, here's an example. Our family's not coming for Christmas. Oh, well, before I give this example, I agree with Renat. I really use what someone says, or if I gather it from their impression, I do think about it. I beg your pardon. Because it is, anytime I feel myself go, ouch, like something's come toward me, it's kind of a trigger signal. Then I think about how that happened, and I certainly always want to own my role in it. And I also then try to observe what could be the other person's. And recently, knowing that our family was not gathering for Christmas, it's a real disappointment. It's actually the second time in about 57 years that we have not been together, and but valid reason. So I was baking, and I had Christmas music in the background, and here comes Mariah Carey singing, "All I Want for Christmas Is You." Well, that put down the baking. I had such a reaction to want to just get into doing whatever the body wanted to do to enjoy that. And while that was happening, I realized, Delrina, you're really dancing the message. You're not just dancing the rhythm of this song, you're dancing the message and what it means to you, that all you really do want for Christmas is to be with your family. And so that triggered an idea for me to make a video and send this message to our children and grandchildren. So I did that, and just turned on the music and let it go. Well, actually, one of the little moves in this just let it go was a little bit of a shimmy, and it was just pure instinct. It was just move to the music, do whatever comes forth. One friend that saw this wrote to me and she said, "Wow, you're one hot mama." That was an ouch.
Oh,
It was an ouch, Cherie.
oh,
It was not my intent to send a hot mama message to my family. That move was instinctual just because it was about the emotion of love, or I'm giving you all I've got, or whatever it is, without being really intentional to be that kind of emotion. So I looked at that ouch and I thought about it, and it was a diss from this friend, because I thought, she's missed the message. Our children all just thought, "Oh, Mom, this is fun." They really loved it because we know how we are with each other. And another good friend was very supportive in this. But that caught my attention again, of how this line in the sand has to be recognized, because it comes to us from outside. Usually in that moment, we act in instinct. We say what we've sort of used as a philosophy before. We make whatever it is, that instinctual part of us is natural. Then when we grow, that new growth can become the new instinctual level. So I just think that what came from this for me was the self-talk of knowing what my intentions were, measuring how those people to whom I really gave it saw it. I know they saw the shimmy, but hey, they put it in perspective. It was not at all intended to be a come on kind of a hot mama. But I have to let that go and draw the line in the sand to let that person have that gesture to her brought that reaction out. And we are very good friends. And she forgot to see it as Delrina just letting it go. And so I'll stop at that. But it's kind of reminding myself that I'm just an animal. I'm highest on the list of animals right now. And so I have instincts that I need to measure because they are about conscience. And but it helps me sometimes to just go back to, you did what was natural, and that was what was human. And you are a human animal as much as a horse is a horse animal, and they can kick and hurt as well as nuzzle. I'm done.
Thank you, Doreen. No, I love that, Doreen, because you were in the flow of life. You did what you were responding in the moment to an inspiration. And I think the line in the sand is what they make up about this is got nothing to do with me, but it has everything to give me a snapshot of where their mind is. Doesn't have anything to do with you. So it's like there's my line in the sand. What you make up about me is your business. I'm clear about what I do in the world. I don't need to explain or defend it. You know what I mean? It's like you made it up, you explain and defend it. I'm clear.
Well,
So I want to see the video, to tell you the truth. I think that would be great fun. I would love to see it, Delreen.
I'll send it to you.
I would. I'd be inspired by it. Thank you for
Well,
sharing that.
well, it's that coming to new discernment, because some of us have already mentioned about how those ouches help us to grow. And that really is valuable, to recognize that line in the sand may be theirs also.
Totally.
Um,
Totally.
I always want to be sure that when I get that ouch, that I'm honest in discernment as best I can be. And often that comes, as Tony says, in sharing it and Cheryl with others who are good friends to help you put up the mirror to what that was about. And so that does it. Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that idea too of like any of those ouches we get. It's like, to me, you didn't do anything wrong. It's an opportunity of waking up to a higher truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's always an opportunity to wake up to a higher truth, because that ouch just shows I've got something. I got a dog in this race. I got a horse in this race or something. No, it's like, wait a minute. And how can I be free of that? So I see those ouches as like a real opportunity to wake up. It's happening for me. It's happening for me to help wake me up to, some concept of right and wrong I carry inside myself. And it's like, I'm just human, just
Make
human.
us stronger, you know, as Renat said.
Yeah. Hopefully more accepting, more free,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes, definitely.
In the pure expression of life. I love what you're pointing to, Delrina. Just responding to the moment, a movement of energy and responding. And that's where the aliveness is. And everybody wants to feel more alive. What somebody thinks about my expression of aliveness is not my problem.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Janet. Thank you, Delrina. Janet.
You said it's hard to argue with the facts of who you are. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, tell me, Janet, what are the facts of who you are? I mean, at your core of your being, if you think about the core of your being, you are pure energy. And we all came from the exact same source. Nobody operated outside this system. We all came from the exact same source. And we are pure energy. And that source can look any way you want, but in my mind, I believe it's benevolent. I believe it's love. I believe it's a bigger definition than anybody humanly could understand about the source of all life, whatever you want to call it. And that, we have that gift inside a body and with a mind, and the same consciousness that runs through me runs through you and every person on this call and every person on the planet. So, and what runs through our mind is a wild card. It's really not personal. We could have anything go through our head. But that's just because the fact that something goes through my head doesn't mean it's me. The source of what's truly me is that I kind of carry this benevolent, loving energy with a personality. I think we over-identify with our personality and make that the definition of who we are, and that's not really what we are. We're so much more than that. Does that address anything, Janet?
Yeah, if you could maybe just a few more sentences about not over-identifying with your personality, because I immediately thought when you said that, hard to argue with the facts of who you are. So I immediately go, the judge steps up and says, well, sometimes you're generous, but a lot of the time,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
particulars of me. So could you talk a little bit more about that, not over-identifying with your personality?
Right. So those idiosyncrasies about we're all generous sometimes. Sometimes we're not. We can be the mean girl. We can be the nice person. We can be. It's like this consciousness carries everything, and we just have personality traits. But underneath all that personality, you're that cliche about we're a spiritual being having a human experience. As cliche as that sounds, but we'll unwrap that for the rest of our life. It's like we really are an embodied essence of life, and we all have a personality that was formed by whatever formed it. But that's not the truth of who you are. You're still a limitless creation from that benevolent source. And in consciousness, we all, that same consciousness beats our heart, so it's like we can have anything run through our mind and act on it or not act on it. But that still doesn't define who you are as a being on the planet. There's so much more. That's okay? Okay, cool. Lisa.
I mean, it just came to me because I was getting the words mixed up. I was thinking, oh, truth, what's truth, this and that. But then when you describe that, I realize that's what you're talking about with truth, which is the essence of who we are. Correct? Okay. And so then when you were talking about, how we identify ourselves, I was thinking, as soon as I start to identify myself or sculpt myself into something, I have to defend it. and so if anybody attacks it, then I have to defend it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure, it gets real personal at that point, doesn't it?
It gets it gets messy. And gets messy. So it's really kind of better not to hang on to stuff like that for me. And whether I'm
as best we can.
Good.
There's no guarantee we can do it all the time, at best we can.
Right.
So what? I can't do it today. So what?
Yeah. So it's like right now I'm this or right now I'm that, but I can let that go too.
Yeah, and you could be completely different in 5 minutes, no problem.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's all.
Thank you, Lisa. So I just want to put that out there about just a New Year's exercise about what would it take for you to give yourself all the acceptance for being human and decide at that point that you're not crossing the line. All it takes is a decision on your part to not cross that line. And if you do, your inner wisdom will wake you up and you can kindly step back on your side of the line. We're really formulating a habit that invites us to be more accepting of our humanness. I love the idea of it being as an ending of a year ritual and the beginning of a fresh year ritual, about whatever it takes inside you, whatever comes, do it. Whatever helps you get clear, because that's the only thing you're up against when it comes to self-acceptance is you. Nobody else is in this game. Draw that line in the sand and not cross it. And when you find yourself, you do, your own wisdom will wake you up and come back to your side of the line with love and compassion for human frailty, of getting out of your lane and the opportunity to come back into the lane. So you can really live a more consciously created life about the acceptance you give yourself will overflow into everybody that you come in contact with. And that's your contribution. If you go out into the world with more acceptance, that's a contribution to the whole. So thank you guys for coming. It's such a treat. It's such a selfish indulgent. I just love it that we all get to come together for a conversation. I'm so appreciative that you guys make time to come in and share and explore. So thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you. I hope you all have a fabulous December, however you decide to spend it, and, draw your line in the sand.
Thank you so much for all of this. It was great.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you, Cherie.
If anybody draws a line in the sand, email me. I'll light a candle for you too. I'll be doing it too. So let's just stay in our lane.
Maybe a thought is to have that line in the sand be near the waves of the ocean, and it gets washed away every now and then.
We're human beings. We forget. You know what I mean? So what? That's part of the package too. We forget, we remember. We forget, we remember. So what?
That's true.
Very helpful.
She was speaking for drawing a new line.
Yeah, totally. But when you really get clear and you draw that line and you decide you're not crossing it, the powers behind your life will support you in not crossing it. But you have to make the hard decision. I'm not saying it's a decision that's hard to make. I'm saying you got to get solid within yourself that you're not crossing it. And then every energy in life will come behind you to support you with that. Don't be ambivalent on it. That's my point. When you're ambivalent, the line doesn't know where to go. Nope, the line doesn't know where it needs to be drawn. But you get clear and solid, you're drawing the line in the sand. It's like carved in stone at that point. You're even off the beach. You see? And you want all of the energies behind life to support you and at least I do, in being more loving and accepting of yourself. Then I can offer it to someone else, but I can't offer it. I got nothing if I don't have it within myself. What a beautiful bunch of living souls I get to stare at here. So thank you all so much for coming. This is such a treat. I hope you found this conversation helpful. I invite you to take a couple of minutes and check in and see what would it take for you to stop finding fault in yourself, and then do it. Make peace within yourself and decide to draw a line in the sand, and decide you're not going to cross it. Decide that today's the day that you stop finding fault with yourself. And when you do, kindly step back, get back in your lane of traffic, and reset. This is Cherie Ray. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope you found parts that are very helpful to you in living with more acceptance, compassion, and understanding.